The International Monetary Fund says the decline in income per capita in Gauteng province is more severe than in any other province. This means that people in rural areas are better off there than in the economic hub, and the IMF says that's due to current unfavorable economic conditions.
Population's growth hasn't been in sync with economic activity over the past 10 years or more. With millions flocking to urban areas for economic opportunities, the demand for those opportunities has now surpassed what the economy can offer. With unemployment at its highest since 2008, it seems there's still a long way to go before the economic storm is over.
Essentially, the economy is just not growing fast enough to be able to keep up with the pace in the population growth rate. And there are many drivers of that. A lot of it stems from the fact that over the past decade we have seen a proliferation of state capture and corruption, which has sucked a lot of resources out of the economy and redirected them to a handful of connected people, individuals who have benefited enormously, but the average man in the street has lost out terribly. Secondly, the government has failed to embark upon meaningful infrastructural investment programs, and the state-owned enterprises have been collapsing financially due to mismanagement and also state capture. Thirdly, we have been failing in terms of our educational outcomes. Too few people who come out of schools are sufficiently educated to command jobs where they can add value to be gainfully employed. Fourthly, there's been a very adversarial labor relations environment. Every second turn that you make, you have unions going out on strike, be it for higher wages, be it for conditions of work or whatever, and that has been very unfriendly to any growth taking place in the economy. And there are probably many other such factors: over-regulation in the economy, an obsession by the government to interfere with economic activity rather than let private entrepreneurial spirit actually take hold of the economy.
According to Stats SA, since 2006, there has been a greater dependence on social grants and less reliance on income from the labor market. The overall unemployment figure stands at an unprecedented 29%.
There is a lot of unemployment these days. People can't find jobs. It's just too hard. People drop out because they see no use of going to school with qualifications at home. Yeah, it's just a lot. It's just not enough. Can they just create more jobs?
The only way to make people or to create more jobs is to empower people with skills like plumbing, electricity, carpentry, all that stuff. That is what South Africa needs now. People with skills who can do something. We don't need these degrees now with ties. There are many managers there. Who am I going to manage when you come from school? We need to make sure that our youth have got skills, proper skills. That's the only way to find jobs. Not to go to universities. We've got many managers. We've got enough graduates sitting down, doing nothing, selling scope here in Joburg, graduates. That's how it's my system. Skills development, that's the only way.
The government is always having promises. They tell us, okay, we are going to create jobs for you. But if you can find out the rate of unemployed people, it's too much. I really don't know what is happening, whether they are still going to do it as the years goes. And since now the president now is the president of UN as well, I believe he's going to do something, but now I'm not satisfied. There is no jobs here. We are suffering a lot.
I'm also a graduate, and I know a lot of people, if you don't want to go back to school as a postgraduate, it's difficult to get a job. I'm currently going sort of like through the same thing. The experience thing, I think it's killing us a lot, because with most of the things that are going on in the country, also with E4AR, it's difficult to be getting jobs.
The IMF says government needs to focus on creating a dynamic business environment. It's said to be more conducive to private investment and job creation. But in the meantime, the quality of life is fast declining for urban dwellers who came to uplift their lives.
The decline in per capita income, in effect, has very startling impact on both individuals and our society. So for individuals, it means that people are less able to afford food, to afford transport, to go and look for a job, to provide for themselves in terms of electricity, housing, all the basic commodities that go into a decent standard of living. For a nation, it means that if people have less money, they're less able to act as consumers. So the demand for goods in a country is reduced significantly, as we've seen in South Africa, which means that there's no way of supporting small businesses to start because people just don't have sufficient income to support the kinds of initiatives that are required to grow our middle class and hence to improve the distribution of income. And so you see a declining cycle.
As it stands, economists believe the poor will continue to remain poor because of the unequal wealth distribution. Nothando Makutulela, SABC News, Johannesburg.
At Health Talk, we don't just talk hardcore health issues. We also tell stories of those affected.
You have a kidney that you received from your sister. What does it mean to you?
I can't thank her enough.
We feature a panel of experts to educate and help us understand various conditions.
What is osteoporosis?
Yes, often it can be confused with arthritis, but osteoporosis is a separate condition. It's a condition that causes a weak bone.
Bring to light issues concerning public health.
Health in South Africa depends upon your pocket, which is very unfair because life is a basic necessity. We'll all have a right to live and to get proper health facilities.
The World Health Organization has urged countries to make preparations to deal with possible cases of the coronavirus.
China's new confirmed infections from the coronavirus outbreak increased by a daily record to top 14,000.
These 213 people have died from the virus in China.
There are now around 17,500 confirmed cases of infections and over 360 deaths.
The mask that you wear that in fact carries the biggest protection you have.
Countries rapidly respond to the virus by shutting down their borders to China.
2,000 people are being kept under observation in Kerala in hospitals and homes.
President Cyril Ramaphosa will deliver his fourth State of the Nation address tonight, but this is his second since he was elected president after last year's general elections. It's widely expected that he will talk about how government will try and stimulate the struggling economy, address matters around poor-performing state-owned enterprises and job creation. He's set to deliver the address as National Assembly Speaker Thandi Modise considers a motion of no confidence brought by the ATM. Let's go to Parliament now, as it's just under 5 hours before President Cyril Ramaphosa is set to speak. Samkele Maseko is standing by. A very good afternoon to you, Samkele. Land expropriation without compensation is a topic that's been at the top of many South Africans' minds, as well as the state of state-owned companies. You've got people there who may help give insight into both of these issues.
Yes, indeed, Nzinga. Those are some of the issues that will be at the State of the Nation address being delivered by President Cyril Ramaphosa. I'm just going to step out of shot and show you that the red carpet has been rolled for the various dignitaries that will be coming into these chambers for the State of the Nation address and the all-important members of Parliament, MPs, who will be attending this State of the Nation address. The red carpet has been rolled for them to enter this prestigious occasion. But has the red carpet been rolled for many South Africans currently facing undesirable socio-economic situations, poverty, inequality, unemployment and underdevelopment are some of the issues that they are facing. They're facing a scenario where they don't have land for agrarian, for them to produce crops of their own so they can sustain their livelihood. So I'm going to be speaking to Business Unity South Africa, Mr. Martin Kingston from Busa, and Togo Didiza, Mayor Togo Didiza, the Minister of Land Reform in South Africa. I'm going to start on the issue of amendment of Section 25 of the Constitution and when the Minister is actually releasing land for South Africans for their own produce, for them to build also their own houses. Minister, the time for talk is over. It's now time for action. When are you giving us land?
Well, let me just say that land is being given every time as we speak. And if one were to take what President said last year, rapid release of land for housing as well as agriculture, we have already 14,000 hectares of state land being given to the Department of Housing, which they are busy with in terms of planning for township development. 1,003 hectares of agricultural state land has also been identified and will be released as from March. 300 of that is where you have got land claims and it will actually be given to those claimants. And 700 will be allocated, and we want to prioritize young people, we want to prioritize women, we also want to prioritize what I would call organic farmers, those farmers who have been farming on communal land but are actually saturated because of the small areas in which they are actually producing either in terms of livestock or crop production. And those are the people who would want to prioritize for this land that will be released. But we continue to do so in terms of the other instruments of government, and we hope that the amendment of Section 25 would create a possibility for a mechanism where we can use that instrument to expropriate land without compensation where it's necessary.
Minister, you bring me to a very important topic of land expropriation without compensation, amendment of Section 25 of the Constitution. At the Grand Parade, where the now President, Cyril Ramaphosa, some 30 years on, one may perceive him as the prodigal son of Nelson Mandela, Mr. Madiba stood on that podium and spoke about the Freedom Charter. Yes. The Freedom Charter being the cornerstone of our democracy. Have you ditched and forgotten the Freedom Charter when it comes to the issue of land? 25 years on since the ANC has been in power, no land has been returned to the people who are the rightful owners of that particular land.
It cannot be correct to say so. We have not ditched the Freedom Charter. Actually, it says land shall be shared among those who work it. And in the way in which the government land reform program has also prioritized farm workers, and we've had many projects that had been undertaken to address issues of farm workers. But there have been challenges too, and I think we need to admit that, where we still see some of the landowners actually throwing away farm workers in terms of whatever reasons that they might have, and thereby losing their security of tenure. That is why, if you look at the land reform panel, there was even a proposal that there should be a moratorium on evictions. I'm saying it addresses those issues. Issues of labor tenants, we have been going on, but you know that the court also made some ruling on how that matter should be speeded up. Land restitution has been continuing, so as land redistribution. But where has there been challenges? Some of the challenges has been around the cost of land, which has actually been exorbitant and therefore slowed the pace at which you can be able to redistribute at scale, because you also have to look at the government resources which is required for other uses. So it hasn't been as quicker as all of us would have loved to. But to say we haven't done anything, I would disagree fundamentally.
When are you changing the Constitution to permit for land expropriation without compensation?
The ad hoc committee has actually released the amendment bill to amend Section 25 of the Constitution. It is out there for the public to actually make comments, and I hope our citizens will exercise their right to give their views on the current amendment that has been put by the ad hoc committee. So once that process has been concluded, Parliament, through the ad hoc committee, will then take those inputs and then draft the bill and then put it to the House for its adoption. And I'm confident that before the end of this year, that process would have been undertaken. But it's important to indicate that the constitutional amendment will be supported by the amendment of the Expropriation Act of 1975, because the Expropriation Act is the actual mechanism that you would use as a tool to expropriate, as opposed just the Constitution.
Minister Didiza, I want you to stay put. I'm going to bring in the money bags, business unity South Africa. Mr. Martin Kingston, are you coming to the party on the issue of land expropriation, or are you against it?
No, we've made our position very clear, and we've been reassured by the fact that we're not going to do anything as a country which either undermines our economic stability or compromises food security. Those are two of the bookends that were made clear when this issue was originally introduced. I agree with the Minister, and we've made it very clear that when we actually make sure that there is land that is transferred, we give the people or the beneficiaries the wherewithal to be able to work that land, to be able to fund the developments on that land. And as the Minister has said, we've got limited financial resources. This year, I believe 2020, the State of the Nation address needs to be a year of implementation. Many South Africans are frustrated at the speed of progress in implementing many of these policies, but we need to do so in a rigorous way. The other point that I would make, Samkele, is that we need to understand that investor confidence at the moment, domestically and internationally, is very fragile. We must provide the requisite reassurance to those investors. We must have transparency, we must have predictability, and we must have accountability. We are not supportive of the idea that there should be ministerial discretion. It needs to withstand scrutiny.
South Africa's economy during the era of former President Mbeki, Mayor Didiza was part of that government. The South African economy was growing at over 3%. What did you as business plow back to the people of this country? 10 years on, 15 years on, the socio-economic conditions of this country are deplorable. You go to Marikana today, they couldn't even build houses for those people, extracting their minerals, taking them abroad, purifying them, processing them abroad. No beneficiation in this country. What are you as business doing to be patriotic to this country and in creating jobs and benefiting the people and processing whatever materials you plow out of our ground to the people of this country?
Well, that's an ongoing discussion, Samkele, and we need to recognize that business is in fact the flywheel of the economy. So we need to encourage business to invest more for the longer term, and in so doing so to create sustainable employment for the South Africans that we're so concerned about, rising levels of unemployment, high levels of inequality, poverty that is unacceptable, and business is a critical contributor. And we're not just talking about big business. In fact, most importantly, we're talking about micro business, small and medium-sized enterprises around the country. And to do that, we need to harness all of the requisite resources to achieve those objectives. Now, the reality is that business has been a significant contributor but could do more. And we need to talk about how it can do more. I think the current situation where we're discussing not only business, but with labour, with community and with government, how to address the issues around Eskom are a very good example of how we must cooperate more effectively and more urgently to deal with major challenges confronting the economy. The last point I would make is that the current environment economically, not only in South Africa, but globally, is much more challenging than the environment that existed under President Mbeki. I think we know that the coronavirus is actually going to result in a slowdown in economic growth in China. The trade wars, in fact, we've been most recently affected only this week by US changes to terms of trade, are going to undermine potential for growth. Brexit, similarly in Europe. All of those factors undermine confidence. We have to restore that confidence.
Are you happy with the Minister of Public Enterprises, Pravin Gordhan? The EFF says he wants him gone. Are you happy with him in that particular post?
And we have stated publicly that we are comfortable with whomsoever the President puts into positions. We've worked closely with Minister Gordhan. We respect him. We acknowledge that he has an extremely difficult job. We certainly do not support the position of the EFF.
Are you ready to be a frontline trooper in defending your own comrade in Minister Pravin Gordhan?
Well, let me say that government, through the President, select a team that will work with him in addressing the challenges of the country. And I am confident that the President has made the right choice in terms of the team that he has selected. And it is his prerogative to decide who should be in government at what time.
Is there not a liability to the President politically and governance-wise?
I don't think there's anybody who's a liability to the President. Actually, the President listens understands, but also he works with the various team of ministers in executing the job that has to be done.
I'm certainly looking forward to getting my own piece of land, Minister Thoko Didiza, when you release it. Are you going to call me to give me that piece of land?
Well, I think South Africans in the majority deserve that we have an equitable land dispensation in our country where everybody can have access to land for settlement, but also for economic use.
I want land in Stellenbosch. Please organize.
Well, you will have to go through a process of applying like anybody else, like any South African.
Thank you very much, Minister Thoko Didiza, refusing to give me land in Stellenbosch there. Hopefully the Minister of Labour, Thula Nxesi, will be giving me land in Stellenbosch. Minister Nxesi, when are the jobs coming?
That's a tall order. You would remember that the President in the previous SONA put this issue of economic transformation and job creation at the top of the list. But the reality is that we've tried in different sectors to encourage job creation, but we can't make the dent on the unemployment statistics. That's the reality. But we're looking at the new strategies, and that's why we are strengthening the role of NEDLEC as a social dialogue forum, where we are saying this is a responsibility not just of government, it's a responsibility of labor, government, business, and the communities. So all of us must have obligations and responsibility.
Are you simply failing, Minister? If you are saying you can't make a dent in reducing unemployment and poverty in this country, are you failing?
We are not failing.
Then what are you doing? Because there are no jobs.
The reason is because if you look at the growth of our population and the issue of the skills, that's what many of the employers have been complaining about, that the unemployment in this country, people have been saying is structural. It's linked to the issue of the quality of the skills. And one of the things which we're doing, and it's at the level of Minister Nzimande working with me, we have deployed a lot of our resources in what we call the UIF funding, the compensation fund, on massifying training people on the skills, but also the TVET colleges are doing that. We are working together with them because we must deal with the issue of the skills. And remember that we are not just dealing with the young people, we are also dealing with those who have been retrenched, because some of the companies are retrenched, so that we retrain them, train them, retrain them, and upskill them. We are able to deploy them back into the labor market, others for self-employment in small businesses and so on. So there are a number of programs which we are putting in place. So we can't say we're failing. Maybe it's going to take time to be able to see the fruits of that.
You sit with this very same Minister Nzimande as the Deputy Chairperson of the South African Communist Party, him being the General Secretary of the South African Communist Party. Where are the solutions? Minister Nzimande has been the Minister of Higher Education, has been fired as the Minister of Higher Education, has been brought back as the Minister of Higher Education. You yourself have been to various ministries, but seemingly there are simply no jobs for South Africans. The very same people you are leading as the vanguard of the working class. How are you protecting that working class?
Sabelo, hang on. I'm not here on behalf of the Communist Party, but I can answer that question. I'm here as Minister of Employment and Labour. The issue is, if you look at the government intervention in terms of funding, I'm saying thousands and thousands of students making, giving access to education. You can see that we are moving as a country. Year in, year out, the government is putting billions. That's part of skilling. And therefore, for that matter, that youth, as much as some of them are unemployed, those who are graduate, they are better off than those who are neither in any training or in employment and so on, who cannot be trained. They are still a challenge, but those you just need to tweak the training and then they are fit for the jobs. So we are working together, and remember that what has been inherited by this country, it's millions of the young people who were denied the issue of the skills. And we're dealing with those backlogs. And I am saying it's not going to be an event. The issue of the creation of jobs, the issue of skilling our people, it is a process.
Thank you very much, Minister of Employment and Labour, Thula Sinqisi. Speaking of job creation and upskilling South Africans so that there could be economic growth in the country, but this red carpet has been rolled for them, the politicians, those whom are supposedly representing us as South Africans. One of the parties says they'll be disrupting the State of the Nation address. Others are continuously making excuses. 30 or so years on since the release of Tata Nelson Mandela, 27 years in, or 26 years in government, has this political party that's the majority in this National Assembly. President Ramaphosa has been dubbed to be the president that many have been waiting for. Those and the man who holds our aspirations and dreams at the palm of his hands, and that he can't sleep with many South Africans still impoverished. But he's been talking for long. When will there be action? When will there be jobs? When will the South African economy grow? He's been dubbed to be the man of business. Is business coming to the party to help the president? Or are they just sitting on their fat balance sheets and not plowing back into the South African economy?
Samkele Maseke giving us an update from Parliament there, asking questions to leaders and also doing a little bit of lobbying. Arabile, it's over to you.
Thank you, Nzing. Another community of Mpolweni in the KwaZulu-Natal Midlands says it's waiting with bated breath for the State of the Nation address. Residents hope that President Cyril Ramaphosa will address their dire situation after being hit by a tornado in November last year.